Polenta. So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for this session. I'm going to hand you straight over to John Warren to talk about Energiesprong in practice. If you can use the chat area or the Q&A area to pose any questions, we'll address them at the end. Thanks. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Leslie. Afternoon, and thanks for having me along to this conference. Very warm welcome to you all. So I have been working with Energiesprong for the last 5 or 6 years since it landed in the UK, and I've been involved in a number of the pilots across mainly England, but I can tell you all about those and progress that we're making now to bring an affordable net zero retrofit solution to our homes. So agenda today, I guess we've kind of done the welcome. The purpose was the brief that I was given was to talk about the funding model behind Energiesprong and then kind of Energiesprong in practice. So what do residents think about it, and what's the feedback from them, and what's the journey been like for them so far? So we'll have a look at that as well. Q&A, I'm quite happy to be interrupted but after each of these agenda items we can pause and hopefully have a bit of discussion. So I look forward to that, and of course hopefully we'll run with a few minutes free at the end to have a bit more discussion before we close. Okay, so let's have a look at Energiesprong, why we're here, and what the funding model is. So Energiesprong started in the Netherlands in 2010. It means energy leap, and the challenge that the Dutch government set themselves was that they weren't retrofitting houses at the right level of pace. The savings or the ambition level of the retrofit industry was not ambitious enough to deliver against our climate targets, and generally they were unaffordable as well from a subsidy point of view. So to subsidise all that needed doing was going to be very expensive and just simply wasn't a way forward. And we looked at the situation in the UK. Again, which we were already 5 years behind the Dutch in investigating that, but we looked at on the screen here is the cuts we need by 2050, so a dramatic more than 80% reduction. The current potential, you know, if we had all the money in the world, was only going to get us to about 52%. If we kind of constrained ourselves by only having the money that we have, then we'd only get to 25%, and you know, ambitions at the time are much less than that, and I don't think they're a lot better today, but we would probably only get 12% savings if we carried on as we are. So the Dutch ran a program and it looked at what we needed to do, and they kind of looked across different sectors and said, you know, why is it that we can have this development that we see in the cars at the bottom of this slide, where we get a lot of technological innovation, we get improved products, we get efficient products, we get, you know, we don't need to subsidize them, and you know, we really get a much different product. Whereas if we look in housing, we've still got the same solutions that we had 20 or 30 years ago. So gas boilers with thermostats, they're very leaky. So they kind of set themselves a challenge of what do we need to do in housing to kind of make that sort of change. And these are some targets that they came up with. Essentially, we're looking at an old home that's better than a new home. How can we make that happen? It's warm and comfortable every day, so free from any drafts or cold spots, or you know, you can't rely on the heat being there. It's affordable from the energy and maintenance savings, and that's guaranteed. So we're paying no more than we would for the house, the energy and the maintenance than we did before. How can we get the scale? How can we build these in factories? And where do we need to get to in order for those to be financed by savings? And of course, we've got to get to net zero energy and nearly net zero emissions. So how do we build all of that in? And this is one of the pilots that by about 2014 or 15, they delivered just as an exemplar to show what the technology could look like. And I've got a little video about how quickly they could do that. I think it's only about a minute and a half, but we'll play that now just to look at the timescales and where we could really go with the innovation. So here you go. Here's just a short video. And just in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see the time elapsed as they retrofit this home and bring all the components together.
Sorry to interrupt, John. Is this supposed to be sound?
There is supposed to be sound, but it's only a lively soundtrack, so there's no narrative. So perhaps if I just continue talking through it,
okay. Thank you.
A little bit. So you've seen some of the modular components arrive. So we've got some roof modules that just are added to the home. We've got some wall panels going on here onto kind of laser measured hooks. We've got an accessible bathroom pod that's going on the back of this particular home where there was some space and need for a little extension. You can see the thick panels there, all complete with windows. And that's done in a duration of 8 hours. And you can see that white box down the front where all the energy components are in. You can see the deeper window ledges there, and a full retrofit completed with all of the preparation factory build done off-site ahead of that and completed on-site in a very short time, just one day. So the Dutch went on from there and built scale in the market. This is a project in Arnhem that was completed in 2018, I believe, and now there's thousands of homes completed with this approach in the Netherlands. The approach has also been applied to multi-story buildings, and we're just looking at how what the solutions could be for homes like that in the UK as well. You may have seen some of the projects that we've done now. This is the first Energiesprong homes outside of the Netherlands, completed in 2018, and that project's gone on to secure further funding, and we've got a good few hundred homes being delivered under that scheme, and with a factory now built and in operation in Nottingham to service that need. This was quite a different project, but a different set of challenges, very conservative planning rules. This is kind of a semi-rural location where we had to stick quite closely to what was there before. You can see that there was, again, a full wrap solution applied to the homes, full net zero, so solar panels on either side. We had to stick with the dormer window, so we ended up having to arrange for again an off-site manufactured dormer window to a really high net zero standard. So these 5 homes were completed with motorhomes in June 2019. A few more pilots down in Devon as well, 16 homes. These ones on the screen are complete, but the rest of that project, some homes in Exeter and some homes with sanctuary housing, nearly complete. And again, that scheme's now scaling up and pushing for a little bit more volume down in the southwest. So how have we done this, and what are kind of the principles behind Energiesprong that's enabled us to deliver the pilots and now start to look at the market. So number one is to ask for a new product. So we need something different, transformational, that really can apply to a lot of our homes. And typically we see markets of about 35% of stock is ready for an Energiesprong project now. So typically standardized housing types, or perhaps non-traditional housing types from about the 1930s to 1970s would be suitable for this sort of retrofit. So we need to ask for a new product. So there's the four kind of principles down the right-hand side there. So we need to be assured about the quality. We need to and the long-term performance. We don't want to intrude on people for longer than 2 or 3 weeks, really. We want to make it affordable so we can drive the cost down. So it is fundable from energy and maintenance savings. And design's important as well. Tenants have a residence to engage sometimes. So if we've got a really desirable product that looks and feels good, then it gets over some of those barriers to scaling up the market. There's a bit more detail on the left there, which I can talk about till the cows come home. But really, the point is that we're not specifying every little detail. We're asking for the outcomes that we need. So we need hot water, we need warmth, we need an allowance for appliances. And this provides some freedom and some scope for innovation in the supply chain. So that's how we kind of set up the specification and ask for a new product. Next up is the focus on people and what tenants and residents get. So we've got this thing called the Energiesprong Promise, or the comfort plan. So moving away from complicated gas bills, electricity bills, standing charges, unit charges, into something that is more like an outcome spec, or more like a mobile phone bundle. So you get a guarantee about heat, a guarantee about hot water, you get plug load for appliances, and a promise, it's not going to be damp and moldy. It's gonna feel good and sound good. It's not going to be noisy either. So moving to a product that people can understand, where there is clear guaranteed comfort and there's a clear cost attached to it, rather than so much variation. And there's a couple of ways we're implementing that in some of the projects. So we can talk about that a bit more in the Q&A perhaps. Business case. So I'm on point 3 out of 5. So bear with me on these key points that we're using to drive the market forward. So on the left, we've got the classical kind of business case that we have today in many homes, where an energy bill is paid to a utility company and the housing provider collects the rent. After an Energiesprong retrofit, what we've done is shrunk that energy bill to a really small amount, at least halving that bill, and the revenue from that goes to the utility company. But it leaves some space to introduce a comfort plan, so you can put that mobile phone type bundle in place, and that provides an extra income stream to the landlord. So the tenant pays no more than they did before. In many cases, they'll get a warmer home. In many of the other cases, they'll save a little bit of money as well. And putting that together with the rent creates a retrofit investment that can be put towards kind of a long-term investment in that home that gets us to our 2050 goals. In terms of that business case, this is what it kind of looks like in a bit more detail. So if we look at the maintenance cost over 30 years, there's approximately £30,000 spent on replacing like-for-like windows, doors, roofs, and any other componentry. That comfort plan I talked about, £10 a week over 30 years gives about £15,000. Other incentives from the market, so clean heat or Eco3 potential opportunities. If we put those together, then we get another £10,000, and that gives us an income and value of savings of 55. And that's where we want to get to in terms of a future market price. So once we've got high volume, factories operational, thousands of these homes being delivered, we think that price point of £55,000 is achievable. In terms of an early market price, we are doing low volumes, tens at a time at the moment, and the cost of doing that, because we're having to invest in setting up factories, doing the design for the first time, working out new product specs, and just because we haven't got the benefits of scale, it's more like £85,000. So we're using additional grants from the EU and from the government to top that up from 55 to 85, which gives an opportunity to start the market rolling. Now there are other benefits as well. So the property value increase could be about £20,000. I know that doesn't always filter through to a landlord's business advantage. We're fit for 2050, so no need to go back to that home again before 2050, or go back multiple times to fit multiple measures. Regeneration value, of course, very high and really brings that uplift to an area. And health as well, removing that damp and mold, giving people affordably warm homes is also an outcome. We've got a business case tool as well, so we can put all of those things into the model in detail and produce some of the outcomes that various parts of a housing provider business needs to put that together and justify and build a business case internally. One of the fourth thing that we're really encouraging is that we're going to need potentially 1 million new jobs for retrofit, which is just a crazy number, really, when we see that we are where we are with the economy and people. So we are really encouraging people to move towards industrialized products. So using factory capacity, using more productive production systems, and moving away from lots of manual on-site work and doing as much of that in factories as we can. And if you look at the targets we need to achieve, we're definitely going to be adding thousands and thousands more jobs, but doing it as part of a productive system and having still a few jobs on site and lots of factory jobs as well, we think is going to be a really important balance and addresses some of the demands around the cost of delivering this and the skills required to deliver this as well. And so we're starting the market. We are bringing together, by doing this, we're working with multiple landlords. So about 25 landlords engaged in Energiesprong. About 10 are currently committed to delivering the volume and the early market. We're working with supply companies as well to find out where the factories are that have got the capacity, have got innovative solutions. And we're working with government as well to say what is the funding and policy. Well, we know what the funding and policy requirements are for this. We need an innovation program and some income to get the market started. How can we bring all of these things together to create the market and unlock that scale and that cost reduction? And these are some of the cost reductions that we're realizing now. So on the left, you can see the cost of putting all of the individual components with different tradespeople, all of the interconnection and design of those systems. Typically, we saw that at around 25k. In the Dutch market, that came down. Perhaps not all of us would want such a big energy module as you see there in the second picture. But that just bringing those components together in a module got the cost down to 17. Those modules are now available at generation 2. We've called them 11,000, and then you can see there's variants just to go in the loft. And we think if we can get the market to about 10,000 a year, the potential cost of all of those components together could be around £5,000. So that's got your ventilation and your air source heat pump and everything else in one unit. We've looked at the trajectory in the Netherlands. We want to follow that in the UK. So they came down from nearly 100,000 down to just below £60,000. We need to do the same in the UK again, where we started at 85,000 for a pilot. We need to drive that down, certainly be below £60,000 per home, but hopefully much further than that. So it really can be something that takes off at scale. Okay, that's the kind of end of the whistle-stop tour of Energiesprong and funding and what we need to do to get that early market. Are there any questions at the moment, or any topics that we'd like to bring up about that? All is quiet, and I think I'm looking in the right place, but I'm looking in the Q&A section, and I've not seen a question in there either. So shall we move on to the next section then, which is more about resident engagement and what we're doing in that respect and what progress we've made. Okay. So, resident engagement process. A lot of data on that slide, but you can kind of get the general process from those chevrons in the middle. So, of course, there's a first step of confirming the business case and perhaps the funding to get rolling. There's some property selection activities to do to find the right place to start the market with the stock. Collecting data. So a lot of our funding requires that we monitor homes before they're retrofitted, looking at EPC data, meter readings, any issues with the tenants, any history about the project, about the house, and any challenges. Building a plan, getting a resident liaison officer on board, creating the communications materials, and the wider group of stakeholders around the project. Next up, initial engagement. So headlines about the project, about what we're trying to do and how it's different to some of the retrofit they might have experienced in the past. Going from perhaps a single measure approach to a whole house approach is quite different, and how that might change the way that the comfort levels in their home and how the equipment they might have to use. And of course, so far we've had no decanting, and I'd like to say no disruption, but we have learned a lot as we've gone through these first projects. They have overrun a little bit, so we're just looking at what the disruption is and being honest with tenants about what that might involve and what the timescales are, and what our ambitions are in terms of moving to a quicker approach. Retrofit design. So we are appointing solution providers. We've used a range of procurement approaches. We've now got an innovation partnership scheme, which is supported, which is UK wide, but supported by the London Mayor in terms of we've got a framework with some solution providers on it who are going through a phased approach and scaling up what they do and reducing the time on site, reducing the costs to get through certain stage gates as they progress. So we've got that rather more complicated procurement route, as well as the usual OJU approaches as well. And of course, that leads to a design process where we can start to share the tenants and agree what their comfort plan might be and what the energy cost might be afterwards. Then there is the build process, of course, making sure that progresses as quickly as possible, solving the problems that come up, and keeping residents informed. And then finally, it's the conclusion where we do have quite a complicated, quite a comprehensive monitoring system installed in homes to make sure that they are delivering what is required. And we're building that data up now into case studies and capturing the lessons learned from the project from some of the schemes we're running. Okay, here's some examples of tenant engagement materials. This one's from Exeter, so they ran a number of a series of leaflets just explaining where they are in the process. Here's one that says about the contractor being appointed, so you might see them and they might start to ask questions about, in particular, about energy use and what the tenant needs out of the project and what they'd like to see. we've got, this is part of a full A3 double-sided communications document that was created by Nottingham City Homes. So again, it explains about the particular jobs, how long they will take, what measures are going to be installed, and what energy bill savings they might like to the tenant might end up with. Again, on that similar sort of vein, this is a project I'm involved in at the moment with Sutton Housing Partnership. So we talked with tenants about what energy consumption they were using at the moment, and did some monitoring about the temperatures. Of course, we're introducing this comfort plan system. So we're offering them a promise that they can heat their home to 21 and draw off the hot water. So you can see that laid out there for the tenants in those particular homes. Yes, some realities of the disruption as well. We've been as clear as we could, obviously learning as we go with tenants. We'd really like to avoid scaffolding, but you can see from these sort of pictures that scaffolding is still a necessary part of what we're doing. But we're looking at innovations now at how facade panels, for example, could be attached to the building without such a long-standing scaffolding arrangement. So it's one of the innovations we're looking at. And yeah, this next video is just of some tenant feedback. So I think we might struggle with the audio on this one, but let me just see if I've got any more control. Let me just apply that. And let's run this video and see if the audio comes through.
I'm not hearing any sound.
Okay, so you can still hear me, but you can't hear the sound of the video.
I can hear you. It's
Okay.
funny because we checked it earlier and it was fine. So sorry, everybody.
Oh. Okay, so again, I'll just provide a narrative. So you saw the little cartoon there just explaining the steps. This one has got some subtitles. I'll let those roll. So this lady's saying it looks a lot nicer than what it did before, and warmer in her house. So she's saying the contact with the builder has been really good, and they've explained what they're doing and when they're moving, when they're going to do certain jobs. And they're very approachable. Stressful but worth it was her conclusion. And then Ken here is talking about the heating system. So his radiators aren't as warm as they were before, but even though they're not very warm, the house stays warm anyway. So the narrative saying this is cold and drafty in the winter, and the gas and electricity bills are very high. And he was saying it's very expensive to run. And he's saying you don't have to worry about the temperature. It just it's always just nice and warm. Okay. Sorry about the audio there. Obviously, always better with the tenants explaining it themselves. But we'll keep moving on. Yeah, and you might have guessed or seen some other activity from some of our other teams, but we've now got teams in France, Germany, Italy, and of course the Netherlands, and they too are working towards delivering net zero energy. And we think working together, we obviously get to share a lot of knowledge, which is really good, but we're also creating that European market for potentially energy modules and some of the appliances we need, which means that we should be able to get to some of those volumes quicker and really leverage the innovation that's going on across Europe and potentially exports as well in terms of our appliances and components that we are innovating and manufacturing in the UK. There's a couple of links there which you'll get in the presentation if you want to have a closer look at what's going on in some of the other European projects. And of course, the Dutch, there's a website there which has been Google translated, but you can see some of the topics that there's a bit more kind of resident data about what people have found in the different projects, and that's been incredibly helpful for us in establishing our program in the UK. Yeah, so it works is the title of this slide, and this is some monitoring data from a couple of the homes that we saw down in Moat. So those kind of room in roof properties. You can see we've got a couple of different. We've got somebody using quite a lot of electricity on the left here, but not so much heat. And then on the right, we've got somebody who's a pretty typical user. So you can see the blue bars are kind of the electricity consumption. So I think these guys have got some sort of workshop. And then on the right, we've got smaller blue bars. So that's a typical consumption. But you see the dotted lines. We've got the dotted blue line, which is how much energy they're using for their appliances. We've got the dotted we've got two dotted orange lines, but the kind of the longer the dashed lines is the space heating demand. So you can see that goes to 0 in the middle of the year and then ramps back up in the winter. And then the dotted line, I think is yellow. That's the space heating. So looking at the one on the right, we can see that the hot water use is far below their appliance, so they're far below their allowance. So we were looking at 125 litres per day of hot water for these homes. And you can see the yellow bars are much below that. And then we've got the orange dashed line for heating. We can see that these guys are using just a bit more heating than anticipated. So they'll probably save a little bit on their hot water costs and pay a little bit more on their heating costs, and benefit from that PV and all highly insulated house. So these guys are pretty much where we expected them. On the left, and 231, we can see again the yellow is below the yellow dotted line. The heating is, apart from October, could have been a cold month, the heating is below what we would anticipate for that home but I did mention about this electricity target, and they're using quite a lot of power for. I think they've got a workshop with some activities going on out there. So you can see that people can use different amounts. Probably what's happening here is the guys on the left are probably saving some money on what they paid before, and the guys on the right are probably ending up with a warmer home than they had before on that one. So all of this data is collected, and we're building up that evidence base and starting to go back with questionnaires before and after, just to reconcile some of these findings and learning more about how we can tune in the solution. So tenants probably don't want to look at those graphs in as much detail, but one thing that we have, well, we haven't developed, but one of our partners has developed, is an app so that the tenants can see where they're up to in terms of the temperatures and how much power they've used. This app's called Shimmy, and it also brings in some local data, so you can bring in bus timetables and community events and add other channels on there as you like. But we particularly brought this one in to look at the power, so we could explain to tenants in a bit more of a usable way, with a kind of, there's a red, amber, green with the green face at the top there on the app that can show them how they're doing and whether their consumption is within what the house was generating for that particular time. And then representation about where they are on their various allowances. So that's something we're trialing now in a number of new homes, a platform called Shimmy. And I think that's it really in terms of the resident engagement piece. And we're into the final Q&A and discussion section. So yeah, very happy to take any questions or talk any more about anything really.
Thanks, John. You can stop sharing your slides if it's easier, and people in the room, they're more than welcome to share their audio and video if you wanted to ask a question directly. There is one question in the chat I can see from Andrew Carey. He's just said, thanks, John. Can I just check the finance again? Was it 60k for the works?
Pretty much that's where our target is headed. So we want to get the cost down to below 60, and we think 55k would unlock the kind of scale that we would need for the market to carry on without subsidy. The costs at the moment are typically around 80,000 because numbers are low, design costs are high, and we're running on some innovation subsidies to try and get that initial market going and that early market established. So so that's for a 3-bedroom house. At the moment it's 80-ish, and our target cost is around 55.
Can't see it. Oh, and Andrew's just come back saying that relies on EU funding, question mark.
We are still running some of the schemes on EU funding, but we have a number of schemes under the Whole House Retrofit programme, which is UK government, and we have a number of schemes under the SHDF programme, again, that are allowing us that £20,000 to £30,000 top up to get the market going for delivering the innovation and that net zero performance.
No, I think that's answered Andrew's question. I couldn't persuade him to come on camera. Don't see anything else on there now. If there aren't any more questions, we can. Oh, right there, hang on. You should say now, do you? Andrew, you should see a button, a blue button, which says share audio and video on this screen somewhere. It's usually in the top right-hand corner. He must not be able to see it on his screen for some reason. No, it's not working. Thanks for trying, Andy. It would be nice to see you anyway. But I can't see any other questions coming through. But if there are any that you think of afterwards, feel free to send Rian or I a message and we can get them over to John. Or you can contact John directly, I'm sure. But thank you for taking the time to come in on the workshop. And thanks, John.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Oh, and just a quick reminder, 2:15, we'll reconvene on the main stage. So enjoy a longer than usual break. Ta-da!